evening, everyone, and welcome to the St. Pete by Night Twitch channel where we play St. Petersburg by Night, a massive multiplayer 5th edition World of Darkness Chronicles set in the city of St. Petersburg, Florida. My name is Kent, also known as Misha Kent on all social media, but that's not important. What you should do is you should go follow St. Pete by Night on all these amazing platforms listed down below, as well as several others that will appear in the chat throughout the night. Here on After Dark, we take a look behind the curtain. We pull back the veil. We pierce the shroud of what makes St. Pete by Night and the World of Darkness as special as it is, where we talk to players, we talk to storytellers, we talk to movers and shakers in the World of Darkness, and I'm very excited to announce that on the 30th of this month, we are going to actually have one of those movers and shakers from the World of Darkness. Mr. Gone, also responsible for Mr. Gone's character sheets, is going to be joining us here on After Dark, and he is going to be answering all of the questions I have for how they got involved with the World of Darkness, what inspired them to create the amazing website resource known as Mr. Gone's character sheets, and what keeps them interested and what keeps them engaged in the platform. Unfortunately, that's not the topic for tonight, as much as I, as well as all of you, I'm sure, wish that it was. No, tonight, we are going to be tackling character creation tips and tricks. Character creation can be one of the most exciting, one of the most stressful, one of the most overwhelming processes of the gaming process for some people. Some people love character creation. They can't wait. That's one of their favorite parts of the whole experiment, is putting it down on paper, figuring out their powers and abilities, planning out where they're going. But for other people, it's just kind of a hurdle or a necessity that they feel like they have to kind of overcome to get to what they enjoy the most, which is the play, the story, the character development through play. But I'm going to help you, hopefully, find some shortcuts, find some ways to make and streamline the character creation process, and how to take the most advantage of character creation. Because I think people tend to kind of discard it as just simply getting statistics figured out, putting a concept on paper, and are going to worry about all of the actual character building in play, when that's a real disservice that you are doing, not just to yourself, not just to your table, not just to your storyteller, but to what that character could be and what kind of stones you can turn over and interesting elements you can find out about your character before you even sit down at a table. So we'll talk about all that. But first, I want to give a very big shout out to one of our sponsors, Panchi Artista, one of our longest running supporters in the community. They've played in the game. In fact, they're about to start playing in the game again soon. And they have been providing tons and tons of character artwork for this amazing community for quite some time now. And tonight, they are offering a very special giveaway to the St. Pete community, to the viewers at home. You can get a line art half body with any option of background on the commission sheet, patterns, symbols, etc. And you can see the commission sheet on the screen there. You can get one of those for free tonight, not limited to Vampire the Masquerade. It could be a D&D character, it could be a vampire character, it could be a werewolf character, it could be whatever you want it to be. But you can get one of those half-body line arts with any option of background for free. All you have to do is enter into the chat hashtag Panchi. That's PANSHI, and you'll be in the running to win that half-body line art tonight here on After Dark. So enter now, enter later, enter throughout the evening, and we will draw the winner of that artwork by the end of the show tonight. So go support Panchi Artista tonight by just entering into this contest, but also support her for all of your art needs, for your character art needs. I have endorsed her product. The server has endorsed her product. She has been absolutely amazing and generous to all of us for quite some time. And you can have some of your very own with hashtag Panchi in the chat on After Dark tonight. So, character creation. It is an opportunity to really be the crafter of your own story, to take the role of storyteller in a kind of micro dose throughout the whole gaming process. Because when it comes to character creation, you are in control for the most part. Obviously, there's collaboration with your fellow coterie mates or pack mates or cell mates. There's collaboration with your storyteller, but really, this is one of the major, if not the biggest opportunity that you are going to get to craft your own story. Now, there are a few pitfalls that come with character creation for a lot of people, is that they either overstack their backstories and their character creation, or they kind of undervalue and really don't take advantage of their backstories. They don't put anything in there. They don't explain why they have certain things that they have, why they got to the place that they are. They don't put in their own bits of trauma for their storytellers to make use of or to take advantage of. Kind of like a plain Jane, very bland character that really only finds fulfillment once they're in the game. And while there's nothing wrong necessarily with either of these approaches, I have found personally it's good to find a delicate balance, to walk a very, very kind of specific line into making a character. You don't want the backstory to be the most interesting thing about the character, and then for the way they play to end up being very safe and very bland. You don't want a very bland backstory for them to have a very fulfilling personality that just has nothing to offer for it. I think having a very nice kind of delicate mix can make the best characters. Now, I do want to take a moment and say here on After Dark, we do receive questions from the chat all night long. So if you have any questions regarding character creation, please submit those throughout the night, and I will hop on those as soon as I can find a moment to do so. So with character creation in the World of Darkness, especially, backstory makes up a great deal of the character. Yes, you can put dots on a sheet. Yes, you can find interesting combinations of disciplines and skills and abilities, but really it's the backstory that makes the character worthwhile in the World of Darkness. And especially in the World of Darkness, you want to have a very, very well defined character. You want to have someone that has quirks and has a little bit of trauma in their backstory, somebody who has lived a rather fulfilling life, which in the case of Vampire has been cut kind of tragically short and has now had to take on a new direction with becoming a vampire. So I think it's really important to think of your character when you first start to build them, not based off of a specific clan, not based off of a specific discipline, not geared towards one direction or a next or another. I think what you want to do in all of the World of Darkness splats is make a human being. This is one of the things that I've gone over in great detail with the players, especially in the first iteration where we were doing one-on-one kind of finalization and going over the character creation process. You really want to create a person. You want to create a well-rounded, fully fleshed out person with relationships, with ties, with likes and dislikes, with past experiences and future ambitions and hopes. Because the World of Darkness is set in our world. It's not a world of fantasy. It's not a world of sci-fi. It's a world of the here and now, and it's even darker than the world that we believe we live in. So I think it's really important to think of it through that perspective. It's important to make them a real person that inhabits our world. And yes, you can take inspiration from characters that you've seen in media and from, people that you've known. But if you kind of try to model them too much off of another person, you could be missing out on certain details that make that person who they are. So you could think, oh, I want to model them off of, I don't know, somebody from a favorite TV show, like let's say Troy from Community. That's a really bad example, but I'm going to go with it anyway. So Troy Bolton from Community. They're funny, they're clever, they're a little bit kind of silly and maybe not super intelligent, but they're athletically gifted. There is a lot to that But then you peel back the layers and really have to go into, like, well, why are they that? Why did they value athleticism and sports over intelligence? Why did they choose a specific route that they chose instead of going in a different direction? What was their home life like? What was their upbringing like? Those kinds of things are the things that you want to and should go over when creating a character. And then we haven't even gotten to the vampire part yet. We're just going with pre-embrace person. And as you start to put those ideas together, as you start to put that concept together, I think you are going to see where they are going to take shape. When I create characters, very rarely do I actually have a specific clan I'm going for. I let the character that I have created dictate what clan they are going to be. Now, to be fair, I've played pretty much every clan in Vampire at least once, maybe more than once at this point. So it's not something that I'm necessarily eager to try something new. But for a lot of you that do have a specific clan in mind, try letting go of that. Try giving your creative kind of endeavor the reins on deciding in what direction they go. And obviously, this is a great opportunity to collaborate with your storyteller, collaborate with your fellow players to figure out where they're going. But I think that you'll find there are certain qualities of the character you create that lean themselves more towards one clan or one tribe or one, specialization for hunters than it does another. There might be things about them that make you go more towards a Bruja and that rather than a Ventrue, or vice versa. Maybe there's a reason that the Toreador would take an interest in them, or the Tremere might take an interest in them. And I think that a good portion of figuring that part out comes from doing a little bit of research in advance, learning the lore, learning about the different clans and what about them, what it is they're looking for in potential embraces, in bringing individual kindred into the clan. There are very, very specific qualities that they look for and very certain rationales that they have when they go to embrace somebody. So, one of the biggest pitfalls people make in creating a Vampire the Masquerade character is that they want to be kind of the odd man out, the unusual one, the unique and not to type character. And while that is interesting, while that is engaging, while that does make you kind of a somebody worthy of attention or somebody that could stand out in a particular story, it actually is contrary to lore. It's very contrary to lore. The clans embrace specific individuals for specific purposes. Sometimes that purpose is revenge against another clan, but usually it's they find someone they think will help benefit their clan, somebody who will bring something to their clan that benefits their overall mission. So with the Bruja specifically, it's a rebellious spirit, an anti-authoritarian kind of mindset of wanting to tear down the establishment, of wanting to kind of preach and cause anarchy to a certain degree, and wanting to, you know, tear down the structure and the architecture and the fabric of society. They preach freedom over anything else, which is why it makes sense that they did end up becoming an anarch, kind of more focused clan in the long run, even though they were part of the Camarilla for a long time. Now, you might think, well, they are also philosophers. Yes, that is true, but that was in Dark Ages, Bruja. They are not as focused on philosophers and intellectuals now as they used to be. Now, if their intellect or their philosophies align with the clan, yes, they could go in that direction, but really they want somebody with a fiery spirit and a kind of revolutionary mindset. So that's what they're going to be primarily looking for. So you're not going to see a Bruja with 5 dots of resources, a billionaire Bruja. You're not going to see, a very passive, kind of establishment-based Brujah. You're going to find those who buck authority, who challenge authority, whether it's, protesters or rioters or people who kind of push back against the establishment. That's what you're going to find primarily amongst the Brujah. Whereas in the Ventru, you're going to see the exact opposite flip side of the coin. These are people who are ambitious to grow businesses, to get into politics, to be the establishment, to take control. The Ventru, known as the Clan of Kings, are meant to rule, and that has to be kind of embedded somewhere in their very being before they're even a kindred. And after they become a kindred, it's only going to get amplified and magnetized by their blood. But really, they have to already have a bit of that ambition in their core. They have to already want to make something, to build something, to control and create something that is going to last. Legacy is a very important thing to Ventru, which most Brujah could give a shit about legacy. So those are just some examples, and you can learn a lot of that through reading various websites and Wikipedia pages about these clans, is that they'll give you a pretty straightforward kind of view into what the various clans are looking for when they go for an embrace. In the old clan books that came from the kind of first, second, third edition of the game, they got into a lot more detail about it. And I know those are harder to find, but there are some PDFs on Drive Through RPG, as well as the different other places where you can get your hands on those clan books. And if you really are interested in a specific clan, whether it's their lore, whether it's that you really want to make a character in that clan, I definitely recommend going and picking them up, because a lot of those clan books have entire sections about what the embrace process is like, what they have to go through, how they're vetted, how they're, in some cases, groomed to fit into the clan, and what it is, what kind of people they are more likely to embrace. So for those out there who want to go kind of against type, for those who want to make the unique version of their clan, know that you're doing so under a lot of scrutiny from any true, experienced storyteller, is that it does kind of buck the clan. It does buck the lore. And, some storytellers might be interested in a story like that. Others might be wanting to kind of fit something more to their specific setting. And so it's a good conversation to have. But in reality, if everybody is bucking the trend, you're no longer unique. You're no longer special. And it's very unlikely that embrace would have happened in the first place. What you can do is find subtle, tiny ways to buck the trend in your character's personality, in your character's kind of belief structure. Very small, minute behavioral things can be the way they buck the trend. Not their overall kind of aesthetic, not their overall belief structure, but there are ways that they can be kind of trying to maneuver and manipulate the clan towards a different way of thinking. That's where you're going to make your character unique and special, is in the details of their history, in the details of their personality, not so much in their overall bravado or in the way that they were embraced, more in kind of what makes them a person, what makes them different than other people. It doesn't have to be bucking the entire clan trend. It could simply be, what was their upbringing like? Were they into sports? Were they not? What was their home life like? What was their relationships with their siblings like? All of those kind of details is what's going to make them unique and special, and truthfully is going to keep them from falling into the trap of becoming a caricature. Kind of an unfulfilling, very one-dimensional or two-dimensional character without a lot of depth, and clearly kind of a joke. Honestly, a joke against the clan, a joke against the system, and a one-trick pony of sorts. So really, falling within clan trends isn't a bad thing. In fact, it makes the most sense. To give a little bit of more lore context to it, for a vampire to be made, they have to have been and this is in most cases, obviously there are a few exceptions, but for a vampire to be made, they have been vetted and, kind of stalked and observed for sometimes years, but usually at least several months before their embrace. In which case, the sire will have to get a lot of information on them to present to their clan to say, hey, I'm interested in embracing this person. The clan will give their sign off. Then they have to take it to the next level of authority in most cases, which would be a prince or a baron, to get the permission to embrace within the domain. At which point, they might not even embrace them right away. A lot of Ventru will ghoul a potential child for years, sometimes even decades, before deciding to embrace them. It is a process. It's not a one and done mistake. It's not an overnight change. There are so many risks that a sire is taking in making a childer, not even including the traditions that are involved of getting permission, of any mistakes that this child makes falls back on me, of the pressures of legacy, but just simply the masquerade itself. When you make a child, you have to make sure that they understand how things work, that you have a certain amount of authority over them. You have a blood bond to them almost immediately right off the bat. So you have to really be able to control the child. And so they're not going to pick some kind of reckless and carefree individual that doesn't fall within what the clan's hierarchy is, because then they're risking bringing down the hierarchy of the clan on them. They're risking bringing down all of the ire and distaste of the clan upon them. Now, of course, there's exceptions. There's examples of somebody who was accidentally embraced and their sire left town. But I'm here to tell you that that has become so common at this point, it's not even a really good story anymore. It's not really special. As somebody who runs and has participated in a community of over 100, well, more like 300 players and character concepts coming and going throughout the over 2 years that we've been running, uh, it's not special. I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of that concept come and go over the time I've been running the game, and it's not really anything to shake a stick at. It's nothing really unique anymore, and it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in the grander lore. It doesn't make sense, especially in the St. Pete setting. It doesn't make sense. So if you want to be unique, don't do what all these others have done before. Don't do the same thing. What make your character unique by making him a truly fully fleshed out person. And then you can add the experiences of vampirism. Maybe the way that they deal with being a vampire could be unique. Some might love it, some might hate it, some might just see it as a means to an end. A lot of kindred have varying feelings about the process and becoming a vampire and the existence of being a vampire. So that could be unique in and of itself. Maybe they do fall in line with what the clan wants and what the clan's looking for, but maybe they just don't like being a kindred. Maybe they are on the road to back to humanity and trying to become human. Maybe they are loving being a kindred and fully embracing it as an opportunity to live forever, which sounds so glamorous until a few hundred years in. But for that first couple hundred years, maybe they're loving it. Maybe they're loving seeing the world and doing things they haven't, done before. Or maybe it is a stepping stone. Maybe it is a means to an end. Maybe they have grandiose ambitions that go beyond being a kindred. They want to, run this corporation. They want to achieve some sort of level of success in their field. Maybe they want to get revenge on something that's been haunting them, for their entire lives. And being a kindred allows them to accomplish that. But then what's next after that when they accomplish that thing? And that's a bridge that they'll have to cross and that you should already be thinking about as the player well in advance. Is what happens if they cross this bridge? What if they do get the thing that they want? What's next? But we'll talk about kind of the the nitty-gritty and the ins and outs of characters in just a moment. But what I want to kind of point everyone's attention to is on our Discord, we have a variety of resources and walkthroughs for the various splats within 5th edition World of Darkness. Now, for tonight's example, I have the Vampire the Masquerade walkthrough, but we also have one for Hunter the Reckoning, and we have one for Werewolf the Apocalypse as well. And these resources are 100% free. If you join the server, you'll have full access to these before you even get into character creation or anything like that. But we're going to kind of walk through one of these layouts and walkthroughs, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about what is included within the walkthrough and how that kind of works. Now, primarily, this walkthrough talks about putting dots to paper, takes you through the step-by-step process, kind of an expansion upon the character creation summary that you'll see in the core books, and not as massive as the various sections and not as in-depth as the various sections, but it does break it down into more easily digestible steps, including, page numbers and places that you can go to find the various resources within the book itself. But like I said at the very beginning, I think you start with a concept, you start with a person, you start with a backstory. You at least start with a pre-embrace mortal or a pre-first encounter hunter or obviously a pre-change werewolf. Start with that, get that fleshed out, and then start putting dots to paper. And then you can kind of fill in any missing details from the character creation process in your backstory afterwards. But obviously, first things first in character creation, you start with getting a character sheet. Now, we have a link to a character sheet that we offer on our drive, but we also recommend places like Mr. Gons, who we will luckily enough be able to talk to on the 30th. And there are a variety of other sites that you can go to that have such resources. I personally am a huge fan of Mr. Gons sheets. That's why I'm partially so excited to talk to him on the 30th. But also, I just think that they're really well filled out. The PDFs don't have as many editing issues when switching between, Adobe and the browser. There's just a lot of kind of easy possibilities to use with the Mr. Gons sheets. So I highly, highly recommend them to everybody. And you can find those just by Googling Mr. Gons. It almost pops up immediately as soon as you start typing that in. Plus, he does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. A lot of the kind of character sheet elements have drop downs in there that just allow you to drop down to whatever it is you're looking for rather than having to type it in. It just auto fills a lot of the information for you as you're going through filling out the character sheet. So anyway, first things first, you can't create a character without a character sheet. So find them from your favorite character sheet distributor and take them from a download. After that, obviously start out by filling out the top section of the character sheet with your name, your concept, your ambition, desire, everything like that, your clan. So one of the cool things that we did in this walkthrough, and we did it in all 3 of the walkthroughs, is we did an example character sheet that you will see get filled out as we go through the character creation process. Obviously, you want to verify which clans are available with your storyteller. In the St. Pete by Night setting, for example, we have completely banned Tzimisce and Salubri for the most part, except for notable exceptions and experienced players. So those aren't available to everyone, but you can see which clans we have unrestricted, which ones we have restricted, which ones are heavily restricted, and which ones we want at storyteller discretion. So talk with your storyteller. Don't get attached to a specific clan because it might not fit within their setting. Talking and collaborating with your storyteller through the story, through the character creation process is really, really essential, because you might create a fully fleshed out character that will be completely useless in whatever chronicle they're participating in. If they don't know anything about the city, if they don't know anything about the world, if they don't know anything about the story that they're going to be told, they might end up being, on the sidelines. They might be stuck on the bench and really not useful, and you might have to end up spending a lot of that hard-earned experience points in turning them into the character that will be useful. So rather than, again, and I talk about a lot of pitfalls, but there are a lot of pitfalls in the character creation process. Instead of falling into the pitfall of making a useless character, don't be afraid to ask your storyteller, what kind of story is this going to be? Is it going to be heavy combat? Is it going to be more social? Is it going to be political? Is it going to be sneaky? Have that conversation with them before you really get attached to a character concept. What kind of clans are the other members playing? What kind of city is this? Is this a Camarilla city? Is this an Anarch city? Is it an unclaimed territory? All of these kind of questions can really help make sure that you are making a character that is going to fit within the chronicle and be beneficial and fun to play within that specific chronicle. So you want to ask a lot of questions of your storyteller throughout the entire process, or else you definitely will be missing out on the overall game. So once you picked your clan, and we kind of given a breakdown of all the clans and their banes, as well as their varied banes, what disciplines they have access to. I'm not going to go one by one, but you can see that we kind of did a lot of the work of summarizing the various clans for you, so that even if you don't have a copy of the book, you kind of get a good idea of what kind of clan you're playing, and you can do further research, or what kind of clans they are, and you can do further research from there to learn a little bit more. So, scrolling down past all of the various clans here. Now we get into the attributes. Now, assuming that you have your character fleshed out, assuming you know who they are as a person, now is where we are going to kill them and turn them into a vampire through the kind of character creation and character building part. Obviously, you get your breakdown here of how many dots go into your attributes, how to calculate your health and stamina, based off your stamina and your willpower. And that kind of is a really quick, straightforward way to fill out your character sheet. Now, a lot of the pitfalls that players fall into, and I know I keep saying the word pitfall, I don't know why it's my go-to today, is how to fill out the boxes. A lot of people think that you shade in the boxes that represent your health and you leave the rest empty. Now, in all World of Darkness properties, there are two types of damage. There's superficial and aggravated. And those are represented usually by a slash or an X through a box. So if you just fill in a box, you don't really have an opportunity to make a slash or an X through it. So it's a lot harder to tell what kind of damage you're taking and how much damage you can still sustain throughout the game. So that's why, as the book states, and we recommend, you fill in all of your unused health boxes so that you can kind of augment the health boxes that you don't have, or that you do have, with the different types of damage. Now, I know that there are some character sheets out there that actually do allow you to put in the damage. You click on it once and it'll put a slash across it. You click on it twice and it'll turn it into an X. So there are some really, really cool kind of interactive character sheets that you can work with out there that might have their own kind of bugs when dealing with Adobe versus browser versus whatever other PDF software, but those are fun to explore and kind of mess around with. But yeah, we always recommend you leave the boxes open that represent your health so that you can properly track your damage and then fill in the rest. And obviously, if you put points into your attributes, that'll open up some more boxes for you. So again, talking about Mr. Gaughan's sheets, a lot of his sheets will auto-fill that in for you. They'll already take care of it all. So once you put in whatever your stamina is, or you put in whatever your composure and resolve is, it will auto-calculate and give you the number of boxes for your health and willpower. So they'll even just save you the effort. But if you are doing it by hand or on your own, best way to go is to leave them open in the front and fill in the rest in the back. Next, we come to skills. Now, one thing that I love about this first early on process is it is universal. It's across the board. All of the World of Darkness games use so far, especially in 5th edition. But even in the older editions, they all use the same character creation process. So in this part of creation, you are learning not just how to do this for vampire, but for werewolf, but for, hunter. All of the games follow the same process all the way through attributes and all the way through skills. So this is a really kind of nice advantage that you're getting in learning this. No matter what system you're in, if you want to try another system, the character creation process is going to be very similar and very streamlined once you get kind of the habit of filling out characters in this way. So, with characters, there are 3 different types. There's the jack of all trades, the balanced, and the specialist. And they couldn't be better named. A specialist is going to be really great at something, or at least a small handful of things, and kind of mediocre to average at the rest. A balanced character is going to be good at a lot of at a good number of skills, at a good number of talents. And then a jack of all trades has a little bit of everything, but isn't necessarily exceptional at any one or small group of things. They can cover a wide landscape, but they've only kind of got the introductory abilities in those specific crafts or in those specific skills that they have. So, depending on the character that you've created, how you've defined them, you're going to pick one of these 3 ways of creating a character. I like to live by the belief that you should be able to explain every single dot you have in your backstory, and you should find some way to make mention of, why are they such a good driver, or why are they so good at sewing? Why is that their craft? And it could only be a sentence or 2 sentences. It doesn't have to be some long term, like long drawn out multi paragraph explanation, unless you're that type of backstory writer. But there should be some base level explanation. So, for example, somebody who has, 1 dot in academics, probably graduated or maybe dropped out of high school. 2 dots, they've had some college. 3 dots, they've probably graduated college. 4 dots, they probably got a master's. 5 dots, they probably got a doctorate. So you want to have an explanation for why they have the various things they have, because 1, it's good for context, it's good for character growth and explanation, and 2, you might be called upon to explain it. Someone might ask you, like, hey, you're really good at hot wiring a car. Where did you learn that? And if you're an improvisational player, maybe that's no problem. Maybe you can explain it on the fly. Or maybe you can just be like, none of your business, I'm just really good at it. But I think it's always good to have a reason, always good to have an explanation. And it's a really good opportunity to take those moments and show off all the work that you've done in your character creation process. It's good to kind of be able to show off the story. This is where people learn about your character. You don't want to be one of those players who kind of comes in and vomits your entire life story in your first meeting with someone. 1, because that doesn't make sense. Who does that in life? Let alone as a vampire, where knowledge is power and all of those secrets are kind of tools to be used at your disposal. You don't want that kind of information getting out because it's a vulnerability. So if you're not going to be one of those characters who's going to come in and vomit out all of your information on people, you're going to have moments throughout your story and throughout your role play where relevant conversations will come up. Okay, so we have to break into this factory to get the evidence of our Masquerade breach away from, the Second Inquisition. Who knows how to pick locks? I do. I spent several years, boosting cars in my 20s. I got this, no problem. That's an awesome moment for your character to have, where they get really fleshed out, where they get to explain themselves, where they get to get a hint of your backstory, and you as a player are confident that you're not going to accidentally say one thing in one session and then say something contradictory in another session just because you didn't have it written down or you hadn't thought it out. If you're trying to lie, sure, but you should at least, as a player, have a foundational knowledge of where these dots came from and have a story associated with them, because you will have those opportunities throughout role playing to kind of tell that story. Next comes specialties, which you get one free one if you have dots in any of these 4 skills, as well as one free specialty in any taken skill. So there are a list of specialties in the core books, and if you have access to all of the core books, it's not a terrible idea to see which specialties are listed in one core book or another, because they may make sense to cross over to the other core book. So, in larceny, there's things like picklocking, breaking in, that kind of stuff. But there might be some in hunter or werewolf that could translate to or could inspire you for a specialty for vampire. They're not usually limited to whatever specific splat there are. There's a couple in werewolves that are werewolf specific, but for the most part, most of them can be translated between the various splats. Also, don't be afraid to talk to your storyteller and come up with a new one. One of the things that I love most about the World of Darkness system is just how flexible it is. It's flexible, storytellers have a lot of room to be creative. So you're not limited to the specialties listed in the book. You can kind of come up with your own and see if there are some that work better for a chronicle or another. So talk to your storytellers again. Make it a collaborative process. Don't just fill out the sheet and just be like, here, I'm done, and just throw it at them and then forget about it until the first session. Like, really work with them and, see, can I take this? Would it be worthwhile to take this specialty in astronomy? No, we're probably not going to talk about astronomy. Okay, then I'm going to make it research instead, which probably will come into play. So really, figuring it out and not being afraid to just kind of poke at your storytellers and see if you can get a little bit of insight into their story, because they are on your team. They want you to make the best character possible. So if you work with them, they can walk you through what's going to be most beneficial. So here, as you can see, we did an example of a properly filled out character. You can see that they have their specialties in performance, in academics, in science, in craft, plus they took a specialty in subterfuge. Now this only works because they took all 4 skills that give you a free specialty, plus a 5th skill, which gives you a additional specialty. If you don't take those 4 skills or any version of those 4 skills, you will be limited to 1 specialty, and that is non-negotiable by the system, but obviously each table follows their own rules. So now, before we move on to disciplines, I'd like to give another shout out to Panchi Artista, one of our long-term partnered vendors, a dedicated and loyal member of the server for the past 2 years. She has been providing artwork for many, many, many of our players, not to mention the entire campaign and the entire server itself, as she was responsible for our first ever server logo, which we used for 2 years before switching over in the revamp. I stand by her work. It's very, very high quality. She takes her time. She makes it, again, a very collaborative thing where you can sit with her and kind of adjust as you go and make changes while you're drawing or while she's drawing. So it's very much worthwhile. And you can get a free half-body line art, which I believe is that second one in down to the 30 and above. You can get one of those with your choice of backgrounds from Panchi Artista for free. If you just put hashtag Panchi, that's PANSHI, into the Twitch chat, and we will draw the winner of that artwork at the end of the night. So it's hashtag Panchi, and you can get a free half-body line art from our dear friends or friend over at Panchi Artista. So this is where we kind of divert. This is where the different splats are going to go in their own directions and kind of take it from here. Is when we get beyond the skills, is where we get into kind of the unique qualities of each individual splat. This is where you're going to be doing your gifts and rights and renown for werewolf. This is where you're going to be doing your edges and perks for hunter. And in the case of vampire, this is where you do your disciplines, where you kind of decide which disciplines you're going to take. Now, This also is based off of your feeding type, but you start with your base disciplines, and then your predator type adds in the disciplines later. Now, these two steps could be kind of juggled around. You could go with predator type first and then do disciplines. But I think you can usually start with disciplines and then decide your predator type, or kind of adjust your predator type based off of what you want your disciplines to do. But either way, there's no wrong way. So obviously, with certain clans, you're limited to what disciplines you get starting out off your clan. Caitiff have the ability to choose any three or any three disciplines at a slightly higher XP rate going forward. But yeah, this is where you kind of pick your disciplines and pick your first few abilities. So, for example, for this character that we've created so far, they have Auspex, Dominate, and Obfuscate, obviously a Malkavian, so that they have their heightened senses and premonition and compel. Again, these should be explainable in your backstory. Every single detail on your sheet should have some sort of reference or explanation in the backstory. So after this character, for example, was embraced, they started, having very, very intense visions, or they, started feeling very sensitive to sound and light and noise, which could explain these abilities kind of starting to take shape and manifest on their own. They found that they were more persuasive and people were doing as they say, dominate, compel. Just a small one sentence explanation that touches on one or several of the points on your character sheet, again, gives you more stories for later. What happened to you after your first change? Well, I was really sensitive to light and sound. I started seeing things that weren't there. I had a predictive memory of the future that ended up coming true. That's so much role play that you just got based off of your backstory. You didn't have to half ass or kind of throw together on the fly. It was already written for you. You had a hand tailored, you controlled backstory that you already had prepared because you put in that forethought, because you touched on all those various different categories. So I highly recommend it. And this is, again, if you have your human made out before this is where you can kind of be working on a backstory and putting a backstory together as you're going through the various sections of the character sheet and filling out, these various qualities. So, after that, you get your predator type. Choosing a predator type can contradict with the type of character that you've made. So you could be a Toreador grave robber. Theoretically, if you want to have something that makes your character unique, something that sets them apart, could be their predator type. There isn't specific predator types for certain clans. There are some that, people who are playing specific clans go towards, but rather than being, oh, I'm not an artist, but I'm somehow a Toreador. I'm not beautiful, but I'm somehow a Toreador. This is your opportunity to kind of put in a potential twist on your character, a potential unusual, kind of spin on the character. It's not great for min-maxing. It's not great for making, hyper powered characters, but it can be great for character development. It can be great for creating a unique quality. So, for example, a Toreador grave robber, I definitely haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen that so far on St. Pete. But it would be a very, very cool concept. It would be a very unique concept. And you can kind of come up with various explanations as to why that's their preferred feeding type. But that being said, a predator type is your vampire's chosen means of hunting. It doesn't mean this is the only way they can hunt. It's their chosen, it's their go-to. So maybe their go-to is cleaver, which means that they feed off of mortal friends and family, meaning they don't often go out to feed elsewhere. They like to, keep it in the house and in a controlled environment. They can still go feed elsewhere. It's not preventing them. It's not saying this is the only thing they do. It's just their preferred method. Some of the predator types are more intense than others. So, for example, bagger, it is really kind of limiting in the fact that is what they want to go with, but they could eat regular blood. Maybe they have a moral opposition towards eating other types of blood, just like with also the farmer is another example. They have the feeding flaw farmer, which means they can't eat anything but animal blood. So, kind of tailoring these in, but having a reasonable explanation as to why. So maybe they're a Toreador, but they live out in the country, or they grew up in the country, and so they feel more comfortable with animals, is why they're a Toreador farmer. Even though it doesn't really necessarily seem like the right type for a Toreador, other qualities can make them a Toreador that isn't, you know, against the clan, that isn't fitting for the clan overall. But anyway, yeah, we have kind of broken down the basic statistics of each of the various predator types here, and we're kind of updating it as we go. When new books come out with new predator types, we adjust this document. So, for example, Montero came out, I believe, with the player's guide. We added it to the document because it is a Google Doc. We can upgrade it as we go. But then we get down to filling out all the specialties, merits, and flaws that you have from your predator type. After that, we've listed all of the hunting roles, which on certain character sheets are on a little drop down here, so that you know when you go hunting. These are the kind of very specific rolls you have to make to determine how successful you are on your hunt. Then we get to advantages. So, there are several kind of pitfalls, the word of the day of this particular After Dark, that people fall into with backgrounds as well. Backgrounds include merits and flaws, which are things that are inherent to you as a supernatural creature, whether they were adopted from being a supernatural creature, whether they were carryovers from your mortal life. These are things that are kind of unchangeable about your character. Backgrounds, however, are things that can be adjusted and ebb and flow as you go. So Haven, allies, herd, all of these things can be raised or lowered throughout gameplay depending on your actions. But a lot of people think that Haven is a necessity. Not putting points in Haven doesn't mean you don't have a Haven. It doesn't mean you're homeless. Unless you take the flaw that means that you don't have a haven, which is this checkbox here, you have a haven. It's not great, it's not secure, but it is a place to rest your head during the day and to zonk out. So not taking points in haven doesn't mean you don't have a haven. Just like not taking points in resources doesn't mean that you're flat broke. It just means that you don't have any disposable income. It means that you have nothing that you can dedicate towards anything else. You are broke in terms of external income or external, money that you can spend, external resources that you can spend in other ways. Also, jumping up the chart, excuse me, jumping up the chart to 5 dots of resources, while it seems like a really good idea on paper, is a terrible idea because it means you're a billionaire, which means you have a lot of attention on you. You have the IRS hounding you down. You have way too much money. And keeping in mind that you have to preserve the Masquerade, you have to stay hidden, you don't want a lot of attention on you unless you're a specific type of vampire. These kinds of things are more likely to draw the ire of your enemies, the envy of your fellow kindred. It gives you lots of opportunities to be exploited. So really, again, talking with your storyteller, saying, hey, if I were to come into this game as a billionaire, what would that mean for me setting wise? What kind of problems could that create? And they will give you, hopefully, very realistic answers. In this area, it's not a very rich area, so you are going to stick out like a sore thumb, and everybody's going to kind of know. If they don't know your name, they're going to know of you, or know which house you live in. If you're decking out a big house, it's going to make you stand out. Or if it is a very rich area, you blend in. You're part of the billionaire boys club, boys and girls club, and so you're just kind of you blend in with everybody else in this particular circle. But there are a lot of people that get break-ins at their houses. A lot of these rich people suffer a lot of break-ins at their houses. Other things that, could help you make your decision. But if you're going to take 5 dots in resources, you definitely want to take a mask, probably several masks, as well as people to help protect those resources. And remember that that's not just liquid cash. Just because you have 5 dots in resources doesn't mean that it's just spend city. A lot of that is tied up in your home, is tied up in your various vehicles, is tied up in investments and stocks, and you can detail that in your backstory as to where all that money is, but it's less likely that you have like $5 billion worth of gold buried in the backyard. It doesn't quite make sense. So really just making it seem reasonable and really considering the consequences that come with the choices that you are putting into your in your backgrounds is very, very important. Being 5 dot resource rich seems like a great idea. Seems like you could bankroll your coterie or sell or pack or whatever the case may be. But it also means you're more likely to be found out. You're more likely to one slip up and it's going to be on the cover of every newspaper. You're more likely to face scrutiny and you're more likely to be a target for entities like Second Inquisition, like hunters. I mean, you see how in depth people go with celebrities, and they're not even 5 dots resources. They're a lot of fame. They're not even 5 dot resources. But if you look at your Bezos, if you look at some of your other billionaires, they're on lists and their financial records are pretty well monitored. And, people know when they're doing the crazy expensive billionaire things that they do, you hear about it. So as a supernatural creature, might be something to avoid generally. I think there's a certain level of wealth that vampires usually like to stick within to be able to comfortably move about. Also, where does the money go if you're supposedly dead? Is it being passed down to a recipient or an inheritor later on that is just you with a different mask name? Where did you get it from? Did you inherit it from yourself? Did you build it from the ground up? Did you steal it? Did you, pay some investments early on that paid off 20, 50, 75 years later? Like, where did it come from? Still a very, very big, important explanation for the character. So, yes, there are lots of cool, unique ways to define your character through your backgrounds, through your merits and flaws. This is where you can give your character that unique quality you're looking for that doesn't make them anti-clan, that doesn't make them, stick out terribly within their organization, and doesn't contradict the lore. Lore is a very, very important part of all these splats, and unless your storyteller is deciding to go off book and off lore, it's an important thing to consider when creating a character, is how is it going to fit within the pre-established setting. Now, I'm not expecting that everyone's going to get their doctorate in World of Darkness lore, which should be a thing. I say it every After Dark, it should be a thing. But having a basic understanding, reading some of the synopses, looking at the White Wolf wiki articles, even though it's, more dated to the older versions of the books, there's a lot of solid information in there that is going to help you flesh out your character and understand them better and understand what they're looking for and what they're more likely to turn. And also working with your storyteller. Finally, you go over your tenets and your convictions and touchstones. Every game, I believe, has, I know for sure every game has chronicle tenets. These are the rules that you're setting for your group. Doesn't mean you can't break them, just means that it comes at a cost. Convictions and touchstones are personal kind of rules or methods to live by. It's how you're clinging to your humanity in whatever monstrous form you're in. And we gave some examples of convictions. Also having an equal number of touchstones attached to those convictions. This is one of the fundamental parts of vampire and also of werewolf, which is kind of holding on to your humanity or holding on to, what keeps you in control of the monster within. This is kind of the explanation in mechanics of what that is. So, the best way, and this is a shortcut tip, because I know I've done a lot of the basics explanation. the best way to make use of your touchstones is to put them in trouble, is to put them in bad situations. Now, I know that sounds kind of dangerous for the long-term health of your character, but to put them at risk, to make them vulnerable, is fun for your character. I have had more fun with my characters' failures than their successes. I recommend to everyone to have at least one local touchstone that they might cross paths with, that they might touch base with, and that their enemies might find out about. It's so useful to have these because one, it's great inspiration for your storyteller to use. It's great bait for your storyteller to use to bring in a personal entwined story for you. Two, the only way to recover aggravated willpower damage is one, to make great strides towards your ambition, or two, to spend significant time with a touchstone. So if your touchstone lives in a different country or lives all the way across this country, if you don't want your character to go missing or to have to walk away from the action for a long time, having a local touchstone makes it easier to go visit them. Usually a phone call isn't going to be enough to regain a humanity, or regain a aggravated willpower damage. Again, up to your storyteller, but I think that being able to go and be in person with a touchstone is a great way to recover aggravated willpower damage. And so having a local touchstone, while it does impose a lot of risk, there's also a lot of opportunity for reward. So that's my tips and tricks about touchstones, is having at least one, and you can choose between 1 and 3, having at least one local creates story opportunities and creates some mechanical benefits as well, having them nearby. So highly, highly recommend. Okay, so we've got our examples here too of our touchstones and convictions and how they're associated. Then you're going to calculate your humanity, and obviously this is going to be affected by your predator type, as well as, you know, some of the other decisions you make in your character creation process. You're going to determine your age. We broke down what a child or a neonate and ancilla typical age range are. This is still, again, very distinctly vampire. They do not have this as well defined or defined at all in hunter or werewolf. Vampires having the ability to span centuries worth of time, they really broke it down into what the expectations of age for vampires are, which is not so much a issue for werewolves or hunters. They also have the blood potency system, which determines how strong of a vampire you are. It's not as much about generation anymore in Vampire the Masquerade. It's a lot more about your blood potency. That is what's going to determine, you know, how strong of a vampire you are, is by the strength of your blood. So this is what your basic starting chart of blood potency is, but in the book it goes all the way up to 10. Now 10 is basically Cain. It's basically the oldest vampire. So it's very unlikely you're going to reach that. Also, there's a lot of drawbacks the higher you get up in blood potency. For example, at blood potency 2, animal and bag blood slake half your hunger than they used to at 0 or 1. So, you know, just being mindful that everything has a benefit, sure, but it also has a ton of drawbacks, and also increasing your blood potency is very expensive. Like, absurdly expensive in terms of XP. So again, weigh the benefits and drawbacks of having a higher blood potency when calculating or kind of planning out or mapping out your character, statistically at least. So, one thing that we do in St. Pete by Night that a lot of other games don't do is that we've created something called a knife block. It's not just a backstory, although a backstory is required. We have a knife block, and the reason we call it a knife block is it's because the knives your storytellers can stab you in the back with. These are you literally putting all of your trauma, all of your vulnerabilities, all of your stories in a bullet point format for your storyteller to just quick reference, pull out, and jab into your story. I have found these to be invaluable as a storyteller. I refer to the knife blocks more than I do the backstories when I'm running games because it is quick reference. It doesn't require me to search through pages and paragraphs to find an explanation for something. This is your quick kind of trauma resource. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, after we talk about, finish up this kind of walkthrough, I'm going to talk about knife blocks and backstories in greater detail. But if your backstory is a novel, a knife block is like your Sparks notes, or I'm really dating myself here, but where you find the kind of quick bullet pointed synopsis of a story, your Wikipedia breakdown, whatever. To help hopefully get more with the kids, whatever it is. This is where it's going to really kind of pick out the highlights of the overall novel or story, the things you need to know, quick reference. That is your knife block. Very useful to storytellers, very useful to DMs, very useful in any game, honestly. It's basically throwing out there like, hey, use this stuff. If you want to do a story for for my character, here's your inspiration. Here's some stuff you can draw from. And it shows an insistence for that stuff to be used. It shows a willingness for that stuff to be used. I don't think anyone should put anything in their character history that they aren't willing to have used or used against them, especially when it comes to lines and veils and stuff like that. If you aren't willing to touch on, specific things in game, don't put it in your character history. Do not include it at all. So if you're against, a history of abuse, don't make your character abused. It kind of, defeats the point. It defeats the purpose of the backstory of the knife block. So really, filling out, just include stuff. Any little detail in your backstory could be used for you or against you. So keep that all in mind when creating a character. But knife block, so valuable. Take this. Use this in your games. Use this for your other characters. Like, use this. I did mean Cliff Notes, actually. I had modernized to Spark Notes. So Cliff Notes was my original. I had just forgotten the name because of old age. So that's for you, Kyrie. Yes, Cliff's Notes. That's what I meant. Spark Notes is what I saw more recently. But yeah, just just giving more information, more detail is very, very useful. And we have templates and examples for backstories and knife blocks. We have some specifics in regards to our setting, like for example, they can't be from St. Pete because the St. Pete setting is ongoing. It makes no sense for a vampire to have been in St. Pete that nobody's ever heard of in the 2+ years of gameplay, unless you work with your storyteller and they have some sort of torpor example that they could bring them in. But I don't recommend that for new players. I don't recommend that at all. But there are always exceptions to the rule. But I say, starting out, don't be from St. Pete. But that's for our setting specifically. And I'm trying to keep this a little more general. But yeah, another good way to work on backstories is to go to character questionnaires and fill out every single question. There is a great website, a great questionnaire called the Mother of All RPG Questionnaires, and I'll actually search for it and show you here on so there. It's under the website Roleplaying Tips, Mother of All Character Questionnaires. There are literally hundreds of questions broken up into categories here about your character. It breaks it down into relationships, into family, into, history, into general questions, physical traits. It asks you about every single quality about your character. And there is the link for the chat right there. It asks so many questions. It gets into nitty gritty details. If you can answer every single question, even if it doesn't apply to you, like reword it so it does apply to you. Find a way to make it apply to you. So let's say you don't have kids and it asks you, like, how many kids do you have? What are their names? You could say, if you were to have kids, how many do you think you would have, and what would their names be? Like, make it hypothetical. Find ways to twist it. You can even add some of your own questions about pre-embrace, post-embrace. Tastes change after being, a vampire for 100 years. So what were, some features that you liked, or something that you liked, when you were a kind that you don't care for anymore as a kindred? There are so many ways to answer every single one of these questions. If you can answer all, I think there was like 600 or 700 of these questions. If you can answer all of these, you are going to have a fully fleshed out character, and I stand by that. If you can answer every single question on this character or on this questionnaire, you will have a thoroughly fleshed out character. And there are other questionnaires as well. If you don't want to dive into a 600 question questionnaire, there are plenty of others. Sometimes when I make a character, I will fill out multiple questionnaires so that I can make sure that I'm covering every single potential question that can be asked, so that I have that information already plotted out and planned out. It's not to say there's anything wrong with doing something improvisational. If you're playing a one shot, maybe you don't need a fully fleshed out character. Maybe it is a one-off character that you're never going to use again. No need to go into so much depth and detail. But also, maybe you'll be glad you did. Maybe you will create a fully fleshed out character, play them in a one shot, and then decide to transition that one shot into a campaign, or take them to another campaign, or join our server, for example. There are reasons to making fully fleshed out characters as much as humanly possible, because you can find so much inspiration or moments. Maybe they didn't work well in one chronicle, but will work better in another chronicle. Maybe there's a reason to find a campaign for them. Maybe you design a story based around them and become a storyteller that features that character as an NPC in the campaign, or a story based off of that character's history in the NPC or in a campaign that you run. There's just so much use to having fully fleshed out characters that aren't just concepts or types. And this website and this questionnaire, which is the one I recommend, can help you accomplish that. Allergies are making my nose itch like crazy, so I apologize for all the nose rubbing. Now we have our submission process. We have other resources that we have linked in here. As I said, all of these documents are available for free on our Discord, which is linked down below, discord.gg/SPbN. You can join the server, and even if you're not intent on playing, introduce yourself, join the community, and then use our resources. That's totally fine. We have created them for the community as a whole, not just for our game. A lot of it is game specific, but tailor it to your own. Take it, take what you like out of it, use what you like out of it, discard the rest. We created this just to help the community of the World of Darkness, not just St. Pete by Night. Obviously, it is more St. Pete centric, but anybody can use this to help make their games, their characters, their stories better. I'm going to take another opportunity to mention our sponsor before we move on to backstories and knife blocks. I want to mention Panchi Artista, one of our longest running community members and creatives that has helped add to our wonderful, amazing world of St. Pete by Night. She is providing a free half-body line art with your choice of background to the winner of tonight's giveaway. All you have to do to be entered into that giveaway is put hashtag Panchi in our chat, and we will put you in touch with her. It is not limited to your Vampire the Masquerade character. It is not limited to a World of Darkness character. It is whatever character you would like, whether it be from D&D or from some other setting. It's up to you to decide what to do with it. She is just giving us this wonderful and generous offer to support St. Pete by Night, to support this stream, to support this community. And we are so grateful for that support. So hashtag Panchi in the chat will get you one of those amazing line arts from Panchi Artista for a character of your choice. So, coming back I'm going to open up our knife block template. Open. Open. Here we go. Okay. So, zoom in a little bit. Okay. That's not. This isn't helpful. Okay. I'll just zoom in. Okay. So, on St. Pete, we ask for people to include their trigger warnings at the top of the knife block just because you don't know who's going to necessarily be reading over this, whether it's your storyteller, whether it's your table mod. So we ask people to just say, hey, there's going to be mentions of some triggering content in this particular knife block just to give them a heads up so it doesn't catch them off guard. Obviously, if you've had discussions with your storyteller in advance about what type of character you're building, there shouldn't be any reason that they'd be caught off guard, but it doesn't hurt to include it. And again, we have an example like this for werewolf, for vampire, and for hunter. So in each workflow, you'll find one specifically tailored to that splat. So obviously, since we're doing vampire tonight, we talk about what important kindred you might have, important kind from your life story or from your backstory, any details about your haven, your mask, your enemies. We just ask you to kind of explain all of these things about your characters as they are potential details. But you're not just limited to these things. If you want to say like, hey, I dated around a lot in high school and maybe that got me a bad reputation. You can throw out just kind of softballs towards the storyteller and just say like, hey, I didn't include this, statistically, but if you want to use any of this stuff, here you go. As a storyteller, I've never complained about having too many knives in the knife block. The more knives, the better. I'll obviously pick which ones fit for my story and which ones I want to use. But there's no raw. There's never too much trauma in a character history. If that's all that's interesting about your character, that's where you get problematic. But having a little bit of extra spice in that backstory is never a bad thing. So obviously we have just the basics examples here of what we expect in a knife block, but you can expand upon it. Now, if your knife block ends up being bigger than your backstory, that's where we might have some problems. But we also included an example of a backstory, which I will copy and show as well. And this is kind of the basics of what we expect in a backstory. Your backstory should include, at the very least, your upbringing, your education slash employment, family and friends, dislikes, and passions, who the touchstones are, and how they embody the convictions tied to them. Usually, a good story explaining that is very nice to have. Why the convictions are important, why the sire was drawn to your character. This is where you kind of key in on why would they have picked you? Why did they choose you? What was so special about you that they decided to embrace you into the family and take on the responsibilities, the drawbacks, the potential risks that they're taking on themselves? This is where you would explain why they would do that. What they've been doing since their embrace, your character specifically, why they're coming to St. Pete, as the character couldn't have been embraced in St. Pete. Again, that's setting specific for us. Talk to your storyteller in your own games to determine if that's still the case. So, for example, we've got a backstory here. Obviously, that goes pretty long, but we've included our trigger warnings at the top. There's a basic layout of their backstory from before and after their embrace, and then a bullet point kind of breakdown of for their knife block of how they would kind of pick out the details. Now, you don't have to write a backstory as a novel. You don't have to do it in a narrative style. You could do it in a bullet point style, but make sure to make it different than your knife block. Have the knives pulled out. Add some extra details, some personality details in a bullet point style, backstory just to give a little bit more, because if it's just the same as the knife block, it's not really doing the same kind of service to you or your character. So, that being said, those are some that's kind of the walkthrough of how we go through our character creation process. As far as just basic essential tips and tricks, make it believable. I have three kind of very simple philosophies to all things gaming, and I can't even take full credit for them. I learned them, as most storytellers do with their own thing, from a friend that I had been LARPing with many, many years ago when I first started getting into that kind of scene. And that was believability, playability, and simplicity. Keep it simple. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. Keep it believable. Something that can be processed and acceptable, something that our brains can comprehend and really kind of envision. And then make it playable. Don't make a character that just becomes too much of a burden. Don't make a character that is going to make you prone to a lot of bleed because you've put too much of your own personality into that character. Really think about, like, is this something I'm going to be comfortable playing? Is this something I'm going to be comfortable presenting to other people? Is this going to be something that other people are going to be able to accept and rationalize and understand? So think about that as you're coming up with qualities about your character. What is believable about the person that you're making? What is, simple but has enough depth to it that you can, you know, relay information to people? And what is it even playable? Because the number of times I've seen character concepts change from character concept to played in the process of play, what they started out as being dramatically different than what appeared in the first couple of sessions, is too many to count. So really think, like, make your character the character you're going to play to the best of your ability. And obviously they're going to develop and grow over the story, but it shouldn't be so shocking and altering when the first time you go to play them, you know. But also don't be too restrictive about what you expect them to be perceived as. I know there's a lot of contradictions in the things that I'm saying, but these are all good things to consider throughout the entire process of creating your characters. Um, are there any questions in the chat? I'm going to do one more toss over to our plug for Panchi, but if anybody has any questions about character creation, I've said a lot. There's a lot to consider, but if there's something more specific that anybody in the chat would like me to go over, please feel free to submit your question now. Otherwise, I'm just going to wrap it up, put a bow on it, and take it home for the evening. Okay, so Tumultus asks, building SBC's background characters, how much detail should we put in for them? That's a great question. So with SBCs, I would say the amount of detail that you put into them should dictate how much of the story they're going to take up. How much room do you want them to take up in your story? So detailing a one-off NPC, putting in the same amount of detail you would put into a PC for a one-off NPC is probably not necessary. It's probably not. It's probably a little bit of overkill unless you see any reason that they might come back around later on. And even if they did come back around later on, you could add that detail between, those two appearances. But I think that at least having a good voice for the character, a good feel, and I don't mean like a physical voice. I mean like coming from, what perspective are they coming from? What background are they coming from? Were they, a little more blue collar, or were they a little more white glove? What how far back do they go? Where do they come from? What are they trying to say? Having a really strong sense of them could help you hop into the improvisational aspect when they do take center stage, when they do get highlighted. So if they do end up saying, like, asking you probing questions about the character, having at least enough of an understanding to be able to improvise them is very useful. But I think again, it depends. I had a lot of detail for Isabel, who is the prince of the city in the first iteration. I had a lot of detail for her fleshed out when I first conceived of her, and then I added details as I went. As you know, I was working with the players as the story was unfolding. She changed a little bit, but I also kind of updated her constantly as I was going in my mind about what have I said about her in the past, what might come up in the future, but she was also a primary NPC. Whereas, you know, some of the smaller background NPCs, the one offs that you would run into, a name, a clan, an attitude, you know, was basically enough for a vampire. Or for a human, it might be a name, an occupation, an age range. You know, it can be very, very simple. So just keeping that thought process going. But yeah, how much space do you want them to take up in the character or in the story? Because if you give them enough detail, another thing to consider is, are you going to want to put that detail on display? Is it going to motivate you to want to push out information that the PCs aren't going to need? Like, oh yeah, I'm from Brooklyn. Also, when I was a child, like I remember this time I was riding my bike and the PCs are just getting bored. You know, storytellers can fall to the same pitfalls, there it is again, as players do, in the fact that they want to show off what they worked hard on. They want to show off what they created, and if it's going to be a one-off NPC, they want to dump out all the details of what they created on the players rather than just having done all this work and having it been for naught or being discarded. So decide if that's something that, you know, you're potentially going to fall prey to. If that's something that you could find yourself problematically doing, is kind of trauma dumping or creativity dumping on your players, then probably keep them simple. Just the information that they have, some basic details about their character, move it along. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts in regards to or into SPCs and background characters. I want to know about the cost slash benefit of making a ghoul retainer for what they cost. Okay, this is from Mimic, aka Bomb Clancy. Retainers and ghouls, depending on what you want them to do, depending on what you need them for, can be very cost effective and beneficial. So, when you when you buy a ghoul, you are effectively getting a second character sheet for your character because you are building a ghoul. You are building them, giving them stats, and giving them a character sheet, even as low as a one dot retainer. And the book has, you know, breakdowns for what the build system is for each level of retainer. You are building a second character sheet. That can be very, very beneficial. However, your character should be the star. Your character should be the one taking on your challenges. Your ghoul, at best, should be assisting you, not doing it for you. The ghouls are property. They are meant to be weaker than the PCs. They are meant to be, yes, they can have some specialties that the PC doesn't have, but they should not be the focus of the story. You should not be deferring all your challenges to your ghouls. Your ghouls, as a vampire, should allow you to have somebody to do errands for you during the day. Should help you make connections that you can't make as a kindred. They should be doing a lot of off-screen work. They shouldn't be accompanying you on all your missions unless they're a bodyguard by build. They shouldn't be your best friend. They shouldn't. I mean, character specific, but most people view, you know, most kindred would view ghouls as property, not people. So, you know, benefit wise, it does create some new story opportunities. It does give you some mechanical benefits, and at 3 XP per dot, up to 3 dots. So for 9 XP, you get a whole nother character sheet. That is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. And having the ability to cross over day and night, also very cool. Having somebody to guard your haven when you're gone, also very cool. You know, there are a lot of benefits to having them, but one, they must be upkept. So you have to remember to keep feeding them that delicious, delicious vitae once a month. And two, they're a liability. You bring them into the game, yes, you have the benefit of putting them out there, but the more you use them, the more you put them in the wave of fire, the more risks you take with them, the more they can be taken away. The more opportunities a storyteller has to take them away. I, as a storyteller, if I see someone being over reliant on a background, I will target that background. I will go after it. Their ghoul will get kidnapped or destroyed or bonded to somebody else or what, like I will. I know it's a useful mechanic and that's them using it, but if they over rely on it, it's going. It's going quickly. Because the characters are supposed to be living out the stories, not the NPCs. The retainers, the touchstones, they're not supposed to be living out the story. You are. So if you're over relying on them, they're going down. Because you're supposed to have the adventure. Plus, it's a good, easy source of trauma. It's such an easy, like, that is the ultimate softball of trauma for a storyteller to hit is, oh, they love their ghoul. I'm taking their ghoul. It's something to be mindful of. So, yes, cost benefit wise, it is very high, but also the risk, just like in all things, is also pretty high. So be very careful with using retainers and ghouls. Let me scroll up. There was another one. Oh, okay. So Kyrie asked, how large of a supporting cast would you expect the average character to have? So when I say supporting cast, I would say people that they could encounter, uh, probably no more than 6 to 8. Realistically, there is such a thing as an overburden of NPCs. So, for example, some distant relations, if they're not a touchstone, they could be touched upon in your backstory, but not have to be a central figure. For like supporting cast, I think having 6 to 8 average is pretty solid. That includes your touchstones, that includes any allies, that includes any, retainers or Mala. Your sire is obviously one. Not including your coterie, obviously, they're their own with their own branches. But I think for your specific character, 6 to 8. Now, I take maximum 3 touch or minimum 3 touchstones every time, min max 3 touchstones. I always take 3, even though it's an option of 1 to 3. I always take 3, but I like difficulty. I usually like to have at least a couple of NPCs mentioned in my backstory that could be brought in, whether they're local or otherwise, like friends and family from the past, just so the storyteller has them to draw from. Um, yeah, so 6 to 8, I think is a reasonable amount of people to have on average. Should we regularly update our knife blocks as the character evolves? I think so. Personally, I love somebody who keeps up their backstories, keeps up their knife blocks, keeps giving me more details. I find that endlessly beneficial. Your storyteller may think differently, so check with them. But I love when my characters update their stuff and send it to me. So if they add a new enemy or a new ally or a new, whatever the case may be to their backstory and send me an updated one, I love it. Oh, my character got a job in story. Here's the details of the job in my knife block. I love it. So personally, I say yes, and I don't think any storyteller is going to argue with that. I think if you just say, "Hey, I've updated my knife block," but here's the updated knife block. They don't have to use it, but at least they have the option to now. So I really, really doubt any storyteller is going to turn that down. Knife blocks have been so fundamental and so useful to us for such a long time. I would say definitely, definitely add it to the knife block and just send it off. Just put it out there. And if they decide to use it, great. If they don't, I almost guarantee they will, though. They'll at least look at it, and that'll be good inspiration for later. So, yes, in response to Krazaz's question, should we regularly update our knife blocks as the character evolves? Yes. Um, Scrolling down. Can you discuss how you would incorporate the mortal build / mortals in a VTM setting? Okay, so mortals make excellent set pieces. They can be great antagonists. They can be great protagonists. They can be great alliances. They can be a great emotional kind of manipulation. They fall in love with the mortal, but then the mortal, they have to deal with the consequences of the mortal being mortal. And if they don't ghoul them, they're gonna die within their life, in their lifetime. Story wise, mortals are great. In terms of statistics and character sheets, I usually don't bother. If I'm playing a very supernatural heavy game, I don't bother with mortal statistics because most abilities that mortals come up against, they automatically fail. Mortals are unsuspecting mortals, as they put it, pretty much fail against everything. They fail against presence, they fail against dominate, they fail against aspects, they fail against everything. Because the weight should be towards the supernatural. That's what makes them special, is that they can pretty much go against nearly anything. So I don't bother with mortals. Now what I'll do is I might grab like some stat blocks for like, oh, this is what a typical cop's stat block is. And you can find these in the back of the books usually of all the different splats. They'll have typical mortal stat blocks. So I'll use those, maybe. I might reference those. Usually I just set difficulties for certain tasks for the PCs to perform. And then they do the task. And I set the difficulty rather than rolling off against them for streamlined play. But yeah, mortals are kind of, like I said, kind of set furniture. They're props. They're meant to be used at, when needed. If you're having a mortal heavy storyline where the mortal is the main antagonist, yeah, you should probably stat them out. And there are rules and stats and sheets for them specifically in the player's guide for sure, but I believe in the core book as well. At least they touch on it. So I do think it's worth statting out mortals if they are going to be a huge part of the story. But again, how much space do they take up in your story? Is it even worth having them statted out? Or are the vampires more likely to beat them to a bloody pulp or, seduce them or whatever the case may be? Is it even worth statting them out for that? So depends. I don't usually stat out most of my NPCs, to be completely honest. They are there to do whatever I need them to do in that specific moment, and that's it. I don't feel a need to have a character sheet for all of my NPCs. I usually just think within a reasonable range or have a very specific goal that I want this character, this NPC to hit. Supernatural and non-supernatural alike. Most of my NPCs aren't statted out. I just have a very reasonable amount of damage that they can take / give. I know I have a small handful of abilities I have them use, and that's basically it. Because it's not about what I'm making, and I think this is another trap that storytellers fall into. It's not about us. It's never about us. It's never about our NPCs. It's never about our stories. It's about the players and the experience that they're having, and if they're having fun. And so if we're so worried about statting out NPCs, it's just another thing for us to have to manage. It's another thing for us to try to shove down our players' throats. It's another, it's just another loose kind of string out there that we have to put when we're already managing so many other things. I mean, I don't like flipping back and forth between the 4 to 6 character sheets I have for the players, let alone adding all the NPC stats and all of the NPC sheets and everything else that could come with it. So, but that's from an experienced perspective and a willingness that my NPCs, whatever happens to them, happens to them. So, any other questions? Let's see. Okay. So, that being said, I hope everybody found some of these tips and tricks useful. I hope this gave some insight into the the kind of character creation process, it's very different among systems. You can use these tips in any system about fleshing out a character through backstory or knife block. You can take these to other games, obviously, but and I encourage you to, honestly, I encourage you to take some of these storytelling or these character creation techniques to D&D. You will have a much more enriching D&D character, and a much more enriching TTRPG character across the board, if you incorporate some of these philosophies of character creation. But I found them to be especially useful in Vampire the Masquerade. It's a narrative story. The game masters are called storytellers. You know, it's called a chronicle and not a campaign. Like, they clearly have a very heavy emphasis on storytelling and role playing. And especially for me as a storyteller, I hate combat. I don't like rolling dice a lot. If I could use dice as little as possible, I absolutely would. So really, the character sheet doesn't actually matter at all, uh, in my ideal game setting. But I do appreciate what it provides. I do think it's, you know, it can be important to have, especially when learning a system. And I do think it kind of gives you an idea of what you're capable of. Actually, a last minute tip I would say is play to your strengths in creating your characters. Depending on the storyteller you're working with, you know, play to your strengths. If you're not a very charismatic person or don't feel comfortable being in charismatic situations, don't make a charismatic character. It's okay to challenge yourself to a certain degree, but if it's going to cause you a lot of unnecessary stress or be a drawback to the game, you know, play to your strengths and challenge some of your weaknesses to a certain point and work on things if you want to challenge yourself with working on things. Also, your storyteller can really help you with having knowledge and awareness of situations that you don't have. So really like pay attention to that kind of stuff too of like, okay, I put 4 dots in a cult, which means your character is really smart in a cult. You may not be. So don't be afraid to ask your storyteller, hey, with 4 dots in a cult, do I get anything off of this? Do I know anything about this? How much do I know about vampires? How much do I know about werewolves? You know, with 4 dots in a cult, how much? They may ask you to roll, or they might just tell you. They might say, hey, you know, this is how much you would know. Also, you could do that with other skills, physical skills, social skills. You could say, what's the best way, me being an extremely charismatic and persuasive person, for me to approach this person and convince them to do the thing I want? One storyteller might be like, well, just roll it. And if you do, you'll get it. Another storyteller might be like, well, you know, you can sidle up to them and really play to this quality about them and really like talk about it in this particular and they might teach you something that you can use later on for your character. You might learn how to play a type of character that you're not used to playing through talking with your storytellers. So really take advantage of it. Be collaborative, ask questions, talk to your storytellers, you know, look at what you have on your sheet as more than just this is how many dice I have to roll. Look at it as an opportunity to learn more about the lore, the setting, you know, different ways to play different characters. And yeah, I guess that's my biggest suggestion. My biggest tip is that your character sheet is more than just a sheet. It's a lot of opportunities, and it can be created with a very rich and fulfilling character. Before or after you make the sheet. I always suggest you make the character before you make the sheet with the backstory, but you can do it either way. If you give me a random character sheet, I can make a story for that character sheet, but that's a little bit more challenging if you don't have a lot of practice in it. Anyway, I've rambled. I've said a lot. I hope you all had something that you could take away from this After Dark. I hope it gave you some good advice. If nothing else, you learned about some wonderful resources we have on the Discord for St. Pete by Night. So feel free to hop on over there and get your hands on some of those wonderful, wonderful resources that we have, whether you take them to your other games or whether you just, you know, keep them for yourself, whatever the case may be. Feel free to jump on those resources. So now, enough of my yammering. We're going to do the giveaway for our wonderful sponsor, Panchi Artista, who is giving a full half-body line art with your choice of backgrounds to the winner of tonight's giveaway. If you enter in the hashtag Panchi, That's PANSHI, you too could win a free half body line art for any PC of yours, whether it's in the World of Darkness or elsewhere. That could be yours. So, the winner of tonight's giveaway is. Let me get to the right window for it. That is not the right window for it. There we go. The winner for tonight's giveaway is Tyler the Nerd, Disgruntled Goat. You have won a free half body line art from Panchi Artista. So go ahead and reach out to Panchi, let her know that you got the giveaway, and she'll throw that together for you. But congratulations so much to Tyler, and thank you so much to Panchi for being a partnered vendor here on St. Pete by Night, for supporting the stream, supporting the community, and making this all possible. It really, really, really does mean a great deal to us. Exciting news for weeks coming up here on After Dark. On the 16th, we have our very own Caffeinatrix, one of our long-term mods / storytellers, coming to do a little chat with me, and we're going to learn more about Caff and how she got into the World of Darkness. I know I've known her 25 years, but you don't. So you'll hear a lot of probably embarrassing stories about me and about our upbringing. But she is one of my longest real life friends and a huge part of the community. So we'll have Caff on the 16th. And then our wonderful sponsor, Panchi, is going to be coming by on the 23rd to tell us all about her art and how she got into it. And, you know, really, really talk about her experiences within St. Pete, but a lot more about her art. So that'll be on the 23rd with Panchi. And then on the 30th, as advertised at the beginning of the stream, Mr. Gone from Mr. Gone's Character Sheets will be joining us here on After Dark. I am super excited for that one. I have used his resources for many, 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 many years. And so it'll be really great to have a sit down and chat with him about the World of Darkness in general, plus putting together the character sheet, you know, the wonderful community he's developed over there, and how his resources are the best resources. So that's coming up on After Dark. On this week, Tuesday, we have Rage Across Tampa, our Werewolf the Apocalypse Chronicle set in Tampa. On Thursday, Sunday, tomorrow, skipping this, Sunday, we have Bloody Strings. Tomorrow, our Vampire the Masquerade coterie, Camarilla coterie run by Barra. Tuesday, Rage Across Tampa, the Werewolf the Apocalypse set in Tampa. Thursday, Don't Get Caught, the Anarch coterie run by Crafty Mirage. Friday, the debut of What the Hell Was That, our Hunter the Reckoning cell run by Cole. And then Saturday, like I said, After Dark with our dear Caff. So it is just getting more and more jam-packed week after week here on the St. Pete by Night Twitch channel. You can almost tune in every single day of the week and catch a stream as our schedule fills up. So, you know, stay tuned for all that. Also, if you're missing out on episodes, go check them out on YouTube or here on Twitch. We have all our past episodes of After Dark, all our past episodes of our various games. All of the first iteration streams are still available. So you can go get caught up on everything St. Pete by Night on YouTube or here on Twitch. And also go support all of our amazing social media listed down below. Just a follow helps. Liking the videos you see helps. We're doing our best to put up more clips on Instagram and TikTok while it still exists for however much longer that is. So go check that out and support our wonderful community. But thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. I hope this was useful. Like I said, I hope this was helpful. If nothing else, you got some cool links to a questionnaire and some resources. So I hope you enjoy that. But thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time here on the St. Pete by Night Twitch stream and on After Dark next week. Have a good night, everybody.